So we are a nonprofit organization that's actually a chapter or a site of a national group, also called the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship. And we've been in existence since 2015 and have had the fortune of having doctoral students participate in our program since 2016. Every year when I talk to graduate students, I realize that the needs of PhD students might be a little bit unique. So that's why I'm excited to be joining you all today to really kind of talk about our program, but particularly how it can kind of fit in with your own research goals and interests and kind of the unique career path that you may be on. And then I'm excited that Larissa and Katie are joining me today because they're two great examples of students who've found a way to, participate in our program, but again, to kind of leverage it for their benefit as well as the community's benefit. So my goals today are to tell you a little bit about the Schweitzer Fellowship, for you to hear from current and former fellows, and then just to kind of let you know what some next steps could be if you were also interested. Those are some questions that I, sometimes hear, like, why should I, as a doctoral student, even be interested in the fellowship? You'll notice as we give examples that a lot of our participants are from health-related fields, so more of the professional school programs like medicine and dentistry, nursing, public health, things of that nature. So I want to speak specifically to sort of your perspective. And then also, again, kind of going back to, how is this similar to or different from research, and what special considerations might you need to be thinking about? But I will kind of pull back at the end. I told Jacob that obviously my interest today is to expose you to this as an opportunity, but I think more broadly, I just want to put the idea of service out there and to let you know that there are opportunities other than just our fellowship. So I'll just briefly touch on that at the end. So our mission is really about preparing future professionals to be able to serve vulnerable populations. And we do that through this one-year fellowship. But I try to tell people our objective is really not about just the one-year experience. It's really about who we're hoping you will become after that. And so we call our current students fellows, and we call our alumni fellows for life, because we really believe that this one-year process is really just the introduction to what we do. Is sort of a lifelong pursuit. Our tagline that you see there, improving health, developing leaders, and creating change, kind of helps explain a little bit more about what we do. So we define health really broadly. We're looking to improve people's not only physical, but also mental and social well-being. And we also take a kind of keen interest in what are called the social determinants of health. So a lot of the projects that you may hear us talk about that students have done in the past are not really, kind of traditional, what you might think of as a health, addressing a health need. It's more about maybe improving educational disparities or things of that nature. So the way that we try to accomplish our goal is, I would say, two or threefold. The two main parts, though, of it are this mentor direct service project, excuse me, that you commit to do with a community site partner. So you are doing this with an established either nonprofit or community-based organization. Sometimes that's a hospital or a school. You are planning and implementing and evaluating that project. So we try to explain that this is different than just a normal volunteer experience, because you are helping them either create something new or expand something that already exists. And that's part of the learning goals for our fellows as well, as we want you to leave feeling like you have a better sense of how to do this community engaged work. So there is the project, and that's sort of the main thing. And I'm sure Katie and Larissa will tell you a lot more about that. But I also want to mention that we have monthly workshops where we bring in speakers from different organizations, as well as some academic leaders who talk about not only the kind of project planning and, evaluation quality improvement piece, but we're also learning more about, how to understand the impacts of the social determinants of health, or how to engage in the community with cultural humility, interprofessional teamwork, self-care, those sorts of things. And so those are fun opportunities, both to learn from, people who are sort of out there already doing this work, but also to learn from each other. And so I like to emphasize the fact that, even just Larissa and Katie today are approaching kind of a similar topic and working with a similar organization, but they come from very different disciplinary perspectives. And so we recruit students, they can be in any field, but just to give an example, we've had anything from law to occupational therapy to someone studying prosthetics and orthotics, pharmacy, medicine, nursing, dentistry, social work, counseling. So that's unique because we find that most graduate programs don't have an opportunity for you to interact kind of cross-disciplinary. And so there's definitely time and opportunities to talk to each other and learn more about these fields. But more importantly, I think to figure out how do these different fields, approach these problems and to gain more from knowing about them. So this is not all, but I just wanted to put some faces and names out there as some of our doctoral students, many of whom were in PhD programs ranging from health behavior, immunology, psychology, epidemiology, health services administration, and kinesiology. Many of them developed projects that aligned with their research interest. So some of you may recognize Jake Files. He's an MD, PhD student in the MSTP program. He was working, I believe, in Dr. Gepfert's lab, and his project that he developed for the fellowship was with Birmingham AIDS Outreach. And he specifically was working with a program they were developing called BFED. So Jake was interested in knowing, do individuals who are both HIV positive and food insecure, would they have better health outcomes if their food insecurity was met? So it was a great project that kind of linked him both with the 1917 clinic, where he has, some research ongoing, as well as with Birmingham AIDS Outreach, to sort of see, his research interest, but from a different angle. And most of our projects are direct service oriented. We've had to be a little creative this year with COVID to figure out how to do that. But I would say that generally speaking, that is something that this project or program would allow you to do, is to sort of get on the ground and see more of a direct application of what you may be studying. I'll give one more example before I turn it over to Katie and Larissa to tell you more about their experiences. But you see Emily Munn, she is a kinesiology student down at Auburn. She's also found a way to sort of link her research and service projects. So her research focuses on the effects of aerobic exercise on attention in individuals with disabilities. And so she ended up partnering with an organization called Girls on the Run, which had sites in different places, including Birmingham, but she's partnered with the one in Lee County. And she's trying to make that program more inclusive and is intentionally recruiting girls with developmental disabilities to participate. And it's a great opportunity for the girls to get to know each other and to develop kind of social skills and friendships across that divide, but it's also about, kind of increasing the physical activity within a population that is kind of unfortunately known to have maybe less exercise than needed. So those are two examples, I guess, of people who've been able to find a way, again, to link what they're studying to how they can be of service in the community. I'll point you to our website where you can read descriptions of all of our current fellows, as well as fellows for life, because I don't want to spend too much time today going into all those details. But Hopefully you'll find that useful too, just to give you a better sense of what our students have done. But with that, I really want to turn the table over to Larissa and Katie. So Larissa was a fellow last year who partnered with Cooking Well. And then Katie, likewise this year, is partnering with both Cooking Well, as well as if y'all have heard about the Grand Challenge, which created this Live Health Smart initiative at UAB. And so Katie's partnering with Live Health Smart as well to impact the food environment in the Eastlake community in Birmingham. So I've invited them to share briefly about their projects and specifically to sort of explain why they chose to apply as busy PhD students, whether this experience has intersected their research, and if so, how, and then what advice they would give to doctoral students who are thinking about applying. And then after they share, I'll give you a few more details about, if this interests you, kind of what you can do next. So Larissa, would you like to go first?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Larissa. I'm a 5th year student. I'm actually over in the Department of Psychology. I'm in the Behavioral Neuroscience program. My mentor is Dr. Robert Sorge, and we study diet and immune modulation of pain in both animals and in people. So that's kind of my background, is diet and pain. But what originally kind of made me want to apply to the Albert Schweitzer Foundation, there's a few reasons. One was that, from a personal standpoint, I felt like, grad school, we all know grad school is very busy, and you're getting your academic, needs met, and you're getting your, sometimes you can get your social needs met, but there was this part of me that was missing in terms of, service and giving back. So there was that lack of fulfillment in that area. So that was kind of more from a personal, selfish perspective, I guess, I was like, I need to fulfill this particular area. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if I actually get out there, because that is something that I really like to do. And I like to talk to people, and I like to do all of that kind of stuff. But I needed to, with the help of my mentor, he said, okay, I'll support you in this. I have a really great mentor. He's like, I'll support you in this, but is there a way that we can, kill two birds with one stone, so to speak? And, you're getting this experience, but then you're also, being able to use it for your research. So Kristen, linked me up with Judy, who runs Cooking Well. So Cooking Well is a nonprofit organization that looks to improve health outcomes by giving free nutrition and culinary education to people around Birmingham. So we have different types of classes. So if you're able to make it to an evening class, we have different sites, but then we also will do some where if we have a population of people who may not have the means to get to us, we will bring the whole class to them. So we cover things from kind of basic nutrition education to, what is a carbohydrate? What is fats? Why is this important? Why is eating important? And then we've been working with Katie, who she'll probably go into more of this, developing our Cooking Well 2, which kind of goes even more in depth when looking at like different disease states and eating for that. But I'll let her talk about that because that's her thing. So that's kind of the background of Cooking Well. So it kind of made sense that, okay, if I'm doing diet and pain, to link up with Judy and, see if we can collect some information from people, around the community. And I think, it's very important to do. One of the videos that we watched in our ASF, I think it was the opening orientation, was basically this gentleman, this Italian gentleman, I watch it all the time, about how he went to Africa and he said that he was gonna, plant all these crops, and they were in Africa and they were gonna show, I can't remember which country it was. They were going to show them like how to do agriculture and all that kind of stuff. And then, so they planted, and they grew all these crops, but then all the hippos came and ate them all. And it was like, oh, well, I didn't realize that. And they were like, well, you didn't ask. And so I think it's important to do these kinds of things, because as scientists, we can get caught up in our ideas, and they're wonderful ideas, like, oh, well, we could do this. And, if these people would eat this way instead of this way, their health could improve, and blah, 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 blah. But we didn't ask what those people needed to be successful in doing that. So I could present this great idea, and they could look at me and be like, in your dreams, like that's not actually going to work in real life. So I think it's really important to go out, and even before you even start an experiment, be like, what is the issue here that needs to be addressed? Because if I don't ask, then what's the point? It's not going to work in real life, especially when it comes to things like diet. So getting feedback from the people you want to serve is really, really important, even if it's serving through your research, because we could have all of this, like I said, you can have all these great ideas, and they could work really, really well in the lab. But if you do anything clinical, that what works well in the lab doesn't always work in real life, because it's just not a controlled environment. So even if you look at research tracks, there is a big push for what's called implementation science. So you have your clinical science, your translational science, and your basic science, but then you also have this small little set called implementation science, where you basically take everything that's worked in the lab and be like, all right, is this even going to work in real life? And you go and you try and apply it in real life, and you do basically an experiment like that, and then you come back and you say, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't, how do I tweak it, how do I go with my next experiment? So that's kind of the way I look at the ASF fellowship in terms of research. It's more of that implementation science. So taking what you know to be true from your research and seeing if it will work, because that's the end goal. The end goal isn't, getting the PhD and getting the paper published. It's, is this going to actually make a difference in the life of somebody with whatever you're studying? So we have to try and implement those things. And the only way we can do that is to get feedback from the community that's affected by whatever it is we're studying. So there was that reason as well, because now every time we go back to our research, I have all those comments and questions in mind. So when I'm writing a grant, or I'm, giving a talk like this, or just anything like that, it's okay, that's a great idea, but what about XYZ barrier that would keep this population from being successful? How are we going to work that in? How are we going to make it so that it's kind of robust enough of a solution that it can overcome all of these barriers? And then I guess the last thing I should say, in terms of how this could benefit your career. So this has actually worked out to be really, really successful for everybody, in terms of like Judy, Rob, and I. So we're working on publishing some of the data that we collected during the time I was a fellow for ASF. So that should be submitted soon. But then we're also writing a really big implementation science grant right now. And if it goes through, I would actually be sticking around as a postdoc. So I would also be getting a postdoc out of it. So basically what we would be doing is taking all of the stuff we know about pain and diet, and literally finding a chronic pain population, making them go through cooking well, and seeing if it makes a difference to go through cooking well and get actual education and hands-on experience, as opposed to the traditional doctor's office route of, here's what I think you should do. You need to change your eating habits. Here's some pamphlets. See you later. So that's basically how you can go from point A to point B. I could go on forever, but yeah, I'll hand it over to Katie.
Well, thank you for that, Larissa. That's a really good setup. So really, what could I say? Like, why did I apply? So I applied for this fellowship because my interests are in community nutrition. So I'm a nutritionist and a dietitian by trade, and I'm working on my PhD in the Department of Nutrition Sciences. So really my favorite thing to do is develop community projects. But historically, I haven't been able to do that without my mentor or a preceptor or something. You know, I was doing the dietetic internship. There's always someone there that was, you know, doing most of the work and just kind of delegating tasks to me. So for this, I really wanted to try it on my own, and, you know, I'll have mentorship, so people help guiding me, but really I had the space and the tools to start a project from scratch and really see what my skills could be like as an implementation scientist, really. So actually a lot of my research is in implementation sciences anyway. And that's why I really like project development. So that's essentially why I decided to apply. And my primary faculty mentor, he said, well, everything that you do, you know, I was a first-year PhD student when I applied. He said, so everything that you do should try to get something published from it. So start, you know, thinking, how can you turn this project into research? And at the time, I was working as the wellness dietitian at the UAB Recreation Center. So I was putting on cooking demos and developing cooking presentations anyway, and doing a lot of nutrition education. And so one of my other mentors, who's actually the director of the department, said, well, I know this gal, Judy Van, and she does, she runs this nonprofit called Cooking Well, and that might be right up your alley, you know, if you like cooking demos and stuff like that. So maybe check with her and see if you can do your project with her. So I did, and she, you know, brought me on board, but then COVID happened. So that really kind of, you know, we couldn't do in-person classes right away. So it kind of turned into more of a capacity building project for me. So I'm developing a whole second set of curriculum for them. We're calling Cooking Well 2 or Cooking Well Next Steps. So it's getting more into the nitty-gritty about the chronic diseases and how nutrition improves chronic disease, or how it affects chronic disease. So I just really wanted it to kind of hit closer to home for this population that we're usually working with. So most people are suffering from obesity, maybe diabetes, hypertension, things like that. So we really are just kind of trying to explain the connection between nutrition and these food-related chronic diseases. And that's the whole point of the Cooking Well 2. But on the flip side, before all of this too, before I even started developing the Cooking Well Next Steps class, I wanted, you know, my research interests have a lot to do with grocery stores too. So I think of grocery stores as kind of ground zero for where the big choices happen. And I wanted to see how nutrition education affected your purchasing decisions at a local grocery store in the East Lake community, which is a food desert. So there's really only like one. It's called the Village Market. So I just went to the Village Market and I talked to the owner and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to, you know, track purchasing trends and behaviors to our Cooking Well participants that come shop here. So he loved the idea. So we got that started. But again, COVID hit. So I wanted to see how can we make this really impactful. And I just contacted the Live Health Smart team of the UAB Grand Challenge. I already had a contact, someone that I had already met with previously. So I just hit her up like, hey, would you guys want to put your name on this? And then, you know, we can call it the food line. Like, so the discounts on healthy items that we're going to be giving to Cooking Well participants, that's really part of it. We want to call it Live Health Smart Foods. So what do you think about using your label? And they loved it. So we've put together flyers and banners, and we're going to have a big grand opening. The mayor's going to try to be there. We're going to have President Watts there. We're going to have a lot of big wigs there. So my whole point, all this to say that, you know, everyone said in the beginning, don't reinvent the wheel. Just leverage existing resources. You know, don't try to start something from scratch. See what's in your community. There's likely already something that you're familiar with, that you're interested in, that you can expand or leverage somehow. And that's true, but I don't want anyone thinking that, you know, don't reinvent the wheel doesn't mean think small. You can think really big too, while not reinventing the wheel. So I'm developing all this new curriculum, I'm getting the grand challenge involved, and if this really works out, then we can actually translate our entire system to other communities in Birmingham, and then maybe outside of Birmingham. And you know, this could really be a sustainable food environmental change for the state of Alabama. And that is exactly how I pitched it to the grand challenge, which is like, isn't that kind of what you guys are trying to do, is get Alabama out of the bottom 10 in chronic disease statistics. So essentially, think big is my advice. Even though you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you can really make some incredible change. And yeah, try to get something published out of it. I mean, why not? If you can try to connect the two with your research, then that really, you know, does, you know, like Larissa is saying, kill two birds with one stone. So that you're working on, you know, they're not separate hours, essentially. You're not, you know, just doing something completely separate for ASF than your research, but you're able to connect the two. And that's really all I have.
Thank you both. I know people probably have questions, so I want to leave time for that, but I just wanted to summarize some of the things I think I heard y'all say, as well as that I think about as the special considerations that doctoral students need to make. And one of those, I think y'all both, you know, mentioned, is that your mentors were supportive of this. And that's maybe the biggest thing I would say is you need to make sure you consult with, you know, your PI, your academic mentor before this, because this is going to be something that you have to dedicate time to. And I think they are in the best position to help you decide, you know, if this is the right time in your academic training, which is another kind of point I had listed there, is that a lot of students only have, you know, maybe 2 years in a master's program. So there's only one opportunity for them to participate in ASF, but a lot of PhD programs are much longer. And so you may be able to apply this year to go March 2021 until April 2022, or you may decide this isn't the right time, but I could do it in a year or in 2 years. So just want to plant the seed now. And then the only other thing I was going to mention is, you know, I used to work actually in GBS. So I had some familiarity with the assistantships that you all are on. And I knew that there were some restrictions about having an assistantship and having another job. And so I have had some conversations with the UAB graduate school, as well as the graduate school dean at UA, just to, you know, kind of clarify what rules there are, because we offer a stipend to fellows. It's $2,500. So it's nothing like the stipends that a lot of PhD students are receiving, but it's meant to offset those 200 hours that you're putting into your project. So I would just say, you know, you'll want to, again, kind of clarify and make sure that what I'm hearing is also what you're being told, which is that there's not a conflict for you to accept that $2,500, and that it will not put in jeopardy at all any assistantship that you may have. I think that's a consideration that most other students are not having to think about. So in terms of sort of benefits, you know, I think Katie and Larissa already spoke through a lot of these. The only other one I would add is that because we're a site of a national organization, you're not only kind of forming a community among your Alabama Schweitzer peers, but also becoming part of this larger network. And actually that picture, I listed there 2 pictures. So the one on the left with the artwork is Catherine Jones. She's now a PhD student in rehabilitation sciences, and her project she did while in a master's program in epidemiology, but she realized through her experience doing art with elderly individuals that she was really interested in how motor, not development, but essentially like using motor skills could impact cognitive abilities. And so it led to her sort of refining her own academic and career path that she's now on. And then likewise, the two pictures on the right are someone who was studying environmental science and is now like working as an environmental health services individual with the Indian Public Health Department. And so I think, again, just thinking about how to leverage this to help you continue on the career path you think you have, or kind of refine your idea. So if you are interested, you see our website there. You can go for more information, including the application. The deadline is not until February 1st, and we will be having more of these kinds of information sessions and office hours and things of that nature, which are also going to be on our website. So last thing is, if you will kind of just send me your contact information. I've got a short form that you can get to, and I'll add this to the chat as well. But we'd love to just know if you're at all interested, just so I can stay in touch and share details of future opportunities.